Welcome to another exciting episode of Musa and Show. Here is what we have today.
Sanibona. Ngaphambi ngene kwivideo namuhla ngifisa sikhumbule ukuthi ngolwesithathu lomhla ka-21 May 2025 President Cyril Ramaphosa behlangene noPresident Donald Trump la kukhulunywe khona ngalamanga beloku kuthiwa la eSouth Africa kubulawa ama-white farmers nokuthi bathathelwe umhlaba. Kodwa into evelile lapha indaba kaMalema ukucula kwakhe ingoma le Kill the Poor Kill the Farmer. Kunevideo engiyibonile la ngifisa ukuqala kuyo ngaphambi ngikhulume le ndaba zo Starlink nani futhi angizukugxila kuzo ngoba nginalwazi kahle ngazo, angakayenzi research mayelana nazo, kodwa nje minister sizomcaphuna naye sizwe ukuthi kwenzakalani. Kodwa ngaphambi ngingene ke lapho asiqale la.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. We aren't working specifically related around struggle songs. If that's what you're asking, that's not an area that we're working on. But let me say this: the kinds of things that we are interested in would be, what kinds of behaviors do we want in a diverse society, so that you can build trust and you can build reconciliation between different groups. What kinds of behaviors do we need? What kinds of actions do we need to build trust? And in that respect, I honestly think that we shouldn't be singing about killing each other. And I mean, obviously I understand that the song is about taking down the structure of white supremacy, and we all understand that. But nevertheless, that's not how it lands. So I think that in terms of building up a society where we can move forward, I don't think that it's helpful. And I think just because the song is legal, as it rightfully should be, that doesn't mean that it has to be sung. And so, and certainly not in the way in which it's being sung at rallies and things like that. So, so I think that it's a question of, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. You can still choose not to sing that song because it is inflammatory for our nation. But I really do need to say that this is a two-way thing. In many ways, a lot of what happens in these interactions is that we're still playing out old colonial racist narratives.
Njengoba umuzwa ke lo mama ethi noma ingoma understand ukuthi it's a struggle song futhi ayimini lento eshiwo ngamagama, kodwa lezi ngoma lezi azilungile ukuthi zingaculwa manje ngoba manje sesigabeni la kufuna khona kuthiwa kuyabuyiswana khona, abamhlophe nabamnyama kufuneka bahlale khona ndawonye. Kodwa ke ngithe mangilalela le nkulumo ngase ngikhumbula enye kasho uDr. Lwazi Lushaba, ngizomcaphuna manje, kodwa ngithe angiqale ngale kuqala ukuze uma ngifika kule ka Dr. Lwazi Lushaba ube sowuqonda mhlawumbe, ngoba ukuzwa kwethu akufani, kodwa mhlawumbe uzobe sowuqonda ukuthi kungani lo mama ekhuluma kanje. Cela uzwe la.
But be that as it may, so I'm going to simply jump to the conclusion and make one point about cognitive domination and try to define what it means. So cognitive domination simply means that those who colonize us, the white settler colonizers, or the white settler minority, has given unto itself the responsibility to craft concepts and categories with which we think about our own reality. So even to think about our own misery of being colonized, we have to turn to concepts and categories that have been given to us by the same settler colonial minority. And there's no best way of demonstrating this than returning you for the last time to Lord Haile's, or rather taking you differently, to a different study this time around. In 1929,
asimbambe uDr Lushabala ngoba uzosuka ngene kwenye indaba ezokwenza ukuthi iphume le video le kula mina engifuna ibe khona. Kodwa into ebengifisa ayichaze ile yathi cognitive domination ukuthi isho ukuthini. Okushuthi laba abazinike responsibility yokuthi noma sixoxa ngomlando wethu noma sixoxa ngokucindezelwa kwethu njengabantu abamnyama kodwa afuna sixoxe ngendlela bona abasitshele ngayo. Shuthi noma kuthiwa sifuna ukukhalela usizo lwenhlupheko kwethu njengabantu abamnyama funa silikhalele ngendlela bona abasitshele ngayo. Yingakho ke kukhulunywa lezi zinto futhi kukhona abantu abamnyama bathi azingaculwa lezi ngoma were yonke lento le ngoba indlela le ekhandiwe ayenzeki lento ngephutha into le eplani no labantu abafuna uma becabanga ngosizo olubehlele njengabantu abamnyama kodwa abalicabange ngendlela thina nje phela ngithi thina njengoba ngisengikhulumela bona njengabantu abamhlophe abasinikeza khona. Ilokho nje engithi angixoxa ingakho mhlawumbe umlando we-South Africa singawufunda ezikoleni sifunda umlando wo-World War II nani yonke lento le ngoba indlela bona abafuna sazi umlando wethu ngakhona. Asiqhubeke sidlule phambili. Ngizocaphuna ubaba uMweletsi Mbeki achaze yena indlela alibone ngayo uhambo ole America luka President Ramaphosa nalaba behamba nabo.
And they should have prepared what answers to give to what question. They never did that. They didn't prepare, and so Trump walked away with them.
So I suppose listening to what you're saying, then you do agree with those who are saying it was not coordinated, because when you listen to, for example, Zingiswalos Kusatu's president, she was quite clear actually on the issue of expropriation and quite clear on what needs to be done. And then you listen to Ernie Els, you listen to some of the delegation there. They talk about a South Africa that needs help. The ANC has been there for 35 years. Things simply aren't working. Even referencing that Madiba got out of prison and he wasn't vengeful and all of that. So did they need to have a coordinated message?
Absolutely. It's because they didn't rehearse. They should have rehearsed for this question because they knew it was coming. Trump has been repeating this many times. So they knew the question was coming, and they should have had a rehearsal as to how it was going to be handled and who was going to handle the question and what were the issues that they were going to raise. At the end of the day, during that whole session, they ended up denouncing our own country. I mean, I was shocked. Our own presidential delegation is going to the largest economy in the world with the most visible president in the world, and they're telling the world we're a crime-ridden country. So what are they doing to the tourism for South Africa? What are they doing to the reputation of the country if they're going to the White House to say we're a crime-ridden country? Anyway, Trump didn't ask them. He just said there's genocide against Afrikaans people or Afrikaans farmers. He didn't ask whether we have crime or we don't have crime, but they are the ones who are bad-mouthing the country. That's what happens if you don't prepare, if you don't plan. They should have planned for the question, and they should ask themselves first, the government of South Africa, why is Trump mobilizing a section of the South African population and encouraging it to go to the United States? Question number one. They should ask themselves that question. Secondly, what does he do? What is he going to do with those people when they get to the United States? Those are the two primary questions they should have asked themselves. In my view, Trump is trying to build what is called a fifth column in South Africa. He's trying to build a group that is antagonistic, especially to the ANC, but answers to him. Because those people, they left the country with South African passports. We don't know what Trump is going to do with them. And then they're going to come back because they still have their passports. You can't exclude them from the country.
okusho baba umbheki la ukuthi njengoba bebehambile bahambe la bengekho prepared ekubeni bebazi ukuthi yini uTrump akhuluma ngayo futhi nabo bazofike bethini kuye noma ke inkulumo ungayihleli yonke kodwa ukuzilungiselela kubalekile futhi benze sure ukuthi kunezinto nabo abakwazi ukuzikhuluma naye back nanemibuzo afuna bambuze yona kodwa lapha into eyenzekile ufike nje bona babakhalmi bancenga ngoba bekhombisa ukuncenga uma ungabukela nje ivideo la uPresident Ramaphosa ayithi khona uzofika amtshele uTrump uzofika amtshele kodwa mase ubuka lento eyenzekile cha akamtshelanga kunalokho okutshelwe yena lokho kusho baba umbheki uthi kodwa konke lokhu kwenziwa ukuthi basuke la bengekho prepared kodwa ke into engiyiqaphelile mina ngesingami ukuthi into ebiyokwenzeka lapha ukohlanganisa ibusiness deal ngoba phela emveni kokubuya kwabo uminister ufike wafika wathi implementa ama regulations we-ICAS ukuze i-Starlink izele South Africa futhi okunye baba umbheki akhala ngakho bafike bazibeka ukuthi South Africa ihluleka kangakanani ukubhekana necrime.
And it only took Donald Trump to remind all of you that this is not a small organization. It was Donald Trump who said to Cyril Ramaphosa, you can't say this is a small organization because it is the only organization in South Africa that filled up FNB Stadium. And he said he never saw an empty seat. There were 100,000 people and more at the FNB Stadium. Why would you say yourself, as a fighter and a ground force, that your organization is a dying organization when the White House says this is the biggest organization in Africa and in South Africa? Comrades, they went to White House to complain about you, that you want your land, that you want jobs, that you want the banks and the mines to be returned into the hands of rightful owners. Batama bo Cyril ba officing ya principala o kare ke matitjhere a tshwere bana ba banyane a re ko bona people are dying in South Africa. Ramaphosa could not defend South Africa. The whole president of South Africa ia ko America and say in America there is a crime in South Africa. Yes, we know that, but why do you say it in America? Because if you say it in America, they will no longer come to South Africa as tourists. Ramaphosa has killed the tourism of South Africa when he declared crime at the White House. Comrades, it doesn't matter who we are. When we go outside South Africa, especially in front of imperialism, we must close ranks. That Rupert goes and speak bad about his TA in White House in an attempt to impress his masters. We don't like John, we don't like TA, but don't speak bad about them to Trump. Come and speak bad about them here to us in our own country. When we are outside the country, we must close ranks.
Njengoba umuzwa ku CIC ufakazela lokho kade kusho baba uMweletsi Mbeki ukuthi ukukhuluma inkulumo efika khulunywa uRamaphosa lapha mayikhulunywa ngecrime ubulale ezokuvakasha itourism la eSouth Africa ngoba abantu bezoza kanjani bazothemba kanjani uma ngabe ugovernment wase South Africa uhluleka ukulwa necrime ukhulu noma ke naye nehaba ke mayethi kuthiwe ipolitical party enkulu ke la eSouth Africa nase Africa cha unehaba ke wonke umuntu vele into mayibhene nayo uyavama ukuthi enze ihaba kuyo angeke uzumsolo usese ngokusho kanje kodwa ke asiqhubeke uzwele inzima vavi ukhulume isizathu esibalulekile esenza ukuthi badele konke azashiye ngisho ibudget speech ahamba ephesheya uveza ukuthi yini ebihanjelwe ngicela uzwe la.
I was listening to the listeners today. They are so happy, some of them. Our president did very, very well to convince this man that there's no genocide. He knows that there's no genocide.
Yeah, but there's nothing
He's
that is...
driving an agenda. He wants Starlink, and it looks like he's going to get it. He has to pay Elon Musk for the billions he poured into his election campaign by expanding his empire all over. It will be in South Africa as a gateway to the rest of the African continent. That's where we're going.
Sure. And it's quite shameful, GS, for people to clap hands for a business meeting, because this was merely
It was a pure business meeting. That's why Rupert came, a multi-billionaire, President championed a multi-billionaire, and Elon Musk didn't say a thing, at least in the open, I'm told. And a multi-billionaire, there was another multi-billionaire, there were four of them in the room, negotiating the future of how the American imperialism is going to be allowed to spread all over the rest of the world.
Babu Vavila ukhulume before uminister memezela ukushintshwa kwama-regulations. Manje ngempela uma uzwa kanje angeke kube coincidence ukuthi bahambe Elon Musk anqaba ukomplya nama-regulations from lapho bahambe bona baya phesheya bese yabuya uminister sekhuluma kanje.
Welcome back. The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa says it's studying the policy directive for a possible change in the law that would allow Starlink and similar telecommunications companies to operate in South Africa. Communications Minister Solly Malatsi has now formally gazetted a request for public comment. The request is the first step towards adopting the proposals. Under the draft proposal from the minister, Starlink and other services would be able to use other means to comply with the triple BEE legislation. The minister joins me now live for more on this. A very good evening to you, Minister, and thank you so much for your time. It's highly appreciated. Please just talk to us with regards to the rationale behind this particular amendment and why now?
Good evening, and thanks very much for this opportunity. And perhaps it's important to start even with the phrasing that a lot of the media is using, which is important to clarify. This is not an amendment. A policy direction basically seeks to achieve one thing, which is one, to clarify the introduction of equity equivalent investment programs in the ICT sector, particularly looking at the allocation or applications for licensing in the telecommunication space. Currently, we have a situation where in terms of the regulator, that being ICASA's regulations, do not align with the overall spirit of the ICT sector codes. And what the policy directive seeks to do is to get policy certainty and clarity, because you would know that equity equivalent programs are part of the legislated instrument for empowerment programs in the country. It is envisaged through the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act and has been applicable in other sectors of the economy. And even in the ICT space, there are companies that are currently operating in South Africa through that vehicle. And it's about ensuring that, one, we maximize through the instruments of the available legislation options of attracting international investment, but secondly, ensuring that there is parity in the application of legislation and regulations. So the intervention is to open up the space for optimally attracting this investment. And it's not about one company. Government does not make rules or regulations for a specific company. It does this to maximize new players getting into the market, to help achieve mainly the goals that government is pursuing. The GNU is very clear in its pursuit of attracting international investment as part of our approach towards achieving inclusive economic growth.
Njengoba umuzwa kuminister ukuthi for Starlink namanye amakhampani azolandela emveni kwalapho sebethi manje ufuna kusuke lento ye-BEE yokuthi ikhampani mayifika la kufuneka kube no-30% ezoshiya la ngoba uzama ukuthi empower sebeza nenye iliso. I-EFF iphawulile-ke mayelana noludaba. Ngicela ukucaphunela ivideo kalosisi lo wakamsane o-spokesperson we-EFF uzwe ukuthi utheni.
The economic freedom fighters rejects outrightly the so-called policy direction issued today by Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Solly Malatsi, to bypass South Africa's broad-based Black economic empowerment laws under the guise of equity equivalent investment programs. This policy is tailor-made to allow Starlink access to operate in South Africa without meeting the mandatory 30% local ownership requirement as per the Electronic Communications Act. Musk has arrogantly refused to comply with the sovereign laws of South Africa, and the ANC-led government has chosen to kneel. This policy is clearly a capitulation in the face of aggressive disinformation campaign of white genocide perpetuated by Musk. The new policy direction from Minister Malatz proposes allowing foreign multinationals to bypass the requirement of 30% black ownership by substituting it with alternate EEIPs, such as skills development or digital inclusion projects, changing ICASA's regulations to allow these EEIPs as valid substitutes for ownership and encouraging investment under these relaxed terms to unlock broadband access and digital infrastructure. Of more concern is a clear national security threat posed by Starlink, as its owner has secured a manipulation of the laws of a country through the use of disinformation and by exerting his power and influence over the president of the US. To surrender our telecommunication capabilities and allow him access and control in a country he is accused of a genocide is a threat to our nation. As a result, the EFF will challenge this unconstitutional proposal in Parliament and explore all legal mechanisms to assert the supremacy of the Constitution and the rightful place of historically disadvantaged South Africans in the ICC sector. We will not allow our laws to be rewritten in Washington.
Njengobuzwa ke EFF ibeka nawo la ukuthi cha yonke le trip le benza beyenze ngoba befuna kuze Starlink. Nami sengithanda ukuyikholwa lento kancane ngoba kwenziwa yini ukuthi after I trip bese bebuya beguqula ama regulations. Kungane eguqulwa manje. Ngiyacela ukuza ukuphawula kwakho. Noma kangakaphasi ke phela ama regulations la. But isikhumbuzo ukuthi labantu baku GNU uma nje iDA neANC bengavota beyivotele lento izophasa ibe semthethweni ngoba bayi majority bona ngokwabo. Sizolobu silandela ukuthi abo bakuzoba ne public hearing basho njalo uphinde futhi ye parliament before uphasiswa ke lo mthetho. Sizolobu silandela nje udaba siza ukuthi kuthiwani ngoba inhlaka eziningi zikhulumile nayo. ICOSATU ebeyingxenye yohambo nayo ngizwile incoma lento ithi izokhanda imisebenzi. uGaten McKenzie nawo ushilo wathi lento izokhanda imisebenzi, khanda amathuba emisebenzi. Asibambe la ivideo ngiyacela ukuza ukuphawula kwakho ngalolu daba. Ngale kwalokho mina nawe sidibane kwivideo landelayo ngiyabonga.